everybody. Welcome back to the Smarketing Connect podcast. I am your host, Tom Libby, the current CEO and co-founder of Smarketing Connect. And we are here again with Paulette Ensign. We'll have Paulette introduce herself in 1 second, but today's episode of the podcast is about what we call live action case studies. So we're gonna, before I get into the question and the role ahead of the case study, I'll give Paulette a couple of seconds just to reintroduce herself, remind everybody, Paulette, if you don't mind, remind everybody who you are and what you do real quick, and we'll get right into the question at hand.
Thanks so much, Tom. I love introducing myself. At least I know sometimes what's going to come out of my mouth, um, which is not always the case when somebody else is making the introduction. I digress. I am Paulette Ensign, and I am the founder and owner of Tips Products Publishing Agency, which is now a mere 34 years old, so sooner or later we'll get it right. The things that we do are we help subject matter experts to identify assets that they didn't even realize they had and monetize them. And those are how-to tips.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. And I was thinking when I was thinking about you and this particular episode, I was worried for you because being in business for 34 years, I'm sure there are several case studies that come to mind when somebody's going to ask you to give us a case study that really worked well in the customer's favor and what really was. So anyway, so here's how the episode works, and then I'll shut up and let you talk. We're looking for exactly what you would read on somebody's website or et cetera, what a case study looks like, which is, what was the problem that they came to you to solve? What were the solutions and the tactics that you deployed to solve those problems? And give us the win. What was the results, and tell us how the client was happy and why they were happy and what the end result was. So now I'll be quiet and you can run off as long as you want on this, but go for it. What's the
Okay,
best case
Tom.
study you could
Thank
think of?
you. Thank you very much. Yeah, when you asked this question, it was a tough choice because over the years there have been several and each has been different. However, I think the easiest one to really grasp is something that was the first time of my doing it, which describes my entire business. I mean, my entire business has been one long experiment, and that's the plight of the firstborn. I wear it proud and loud. The first time that I ever did a licensing deal. Now, there's some people listening that are going to say, licensing deal, is that like selling a whole lot? In one way, it can be, but a clearer definition is when you are renting the use of something you own in the way of content. And when you think about an apartment building, you may own the apartment building and you rent out each of the apartments with legal documents. Same thing is true when you've got, for instance, a manuscript of 52 tips. You own it and you rent it out with a legal agreement, a legal written agreement saying what the licensee can and cannot do. And it's a legal document that stands up in case you need to question anything. So I was pretty early in my business, but that didn't stop me from going after all kinds of things that were probably above my pay grade, but so what? Um, there was a company that some of you may actually even recognize, the Lillian Vernon catalog, which was the consumer mail order catalog company in its day. The founder, Lillian Vernon, was a real powerhouse, and she apparently was the first woman to go public with her company ever.
Wow.
So that was great right there. I was formerly a professional organizing consultant, which is what the tips booklet I wrote that I sold over 2 million copies of is what we're referencing in this story. So it was time to go to the annual conference of the association, and I had just finished my booklet. There was a representative from the Lillian Vernon catalog who was a corporate member of the National Association of Professional Organizers, and I couldn't wait to show him my booklet. And I knew that I was going to have information from him very quickly. He's a New Yorker and he talks like a New Yorker. So I am formerly a New Yorker. He was talking as fast as he possibly could, and I was listening as fast as I possibly could. And I showed him this tips booklet, And he starts looking at it. He's flipping the pages. Yeah, this is great. This is terrific. You ought to license us the right to print 250,000 copies, maybe a between a nickel and a dime a unit. And I said to him, David, I was just thinking about that. Now, I was thinking about it. I was listening to him. He was giving me all this information, and I knew it. I realized it instantly. So I tuned in, wiped out all distractions, and came up with my slightly wise guy response. It was true that I had just thought about it, so all was fine. He countered, which I was not the least bit surprised, and he said, "Okay, so I countered with 7.5 cents, which was between a nickel and a dime." I mean, I was being very literal. He countered with a nickel or no sale. I said, a nickel or no sale. Let me think about this instead of reacting. A nickel times 250,000 is $12,500. I had not ever seen my name and those numbers ever in my life together, paired. So I said 12.5, yeah, that sounds like that would pay a few things. Yeah. Then I also thought about Lillian Vernon catalog. That would give me a lot of street credibility because that name was very well known. So I said to David, okay, fine, that would be great. We'll do it. And what the mechanics of that were was that this was how long ago it was. I provided the file on a floppy disk. Floppy disks don't exist anymore. Now, so I gave him that. Instead of today, we would merely send it as an attachment to an email, and that would be bum bum like that. So I provided a written licensing agreement, which they had their legal department review, and it turned out that they improved it to my advantage, and I didn't that they weren't sending me an invoice. So I thought that was especially great. But the fact of the matter is that the transaction was based on something I had already done that I was absolutely repurposing in a wonderful way, a lucrative way, a way that was going to be very helpful to the Lillian Vernon catalog. The way they chose to use it was, again, a model that is very familiar to many of us if you stop and think about it for a half a second. Gift with purchase.
Mhm.
So if you bought anything from that issue of their catalog, you had the opportunity to receive that booklet as a gift. And if you wanted to buy it, they also made it available if you wanted to buy it. But the thing that was very interesting to me, and again, not so surprising, many of my colleagues said, "Oh, you're going to sell your booklet in the catalog?" I went, "No, I'm not. It's the marketing department that had a conversation with. We're talking about a much larger audience and a much larger impact, and everybody benefits from it. Certainly, the company benefits from it because it's getting a broad and generic. The topic was generic, so that I'm sure was why it was so attractive to the Lillian Vernon catalog. Certainly was going to be beneficial to me and was going to be beneficial to the people that were receiving it. So it was a triple win. The thing that is so fascinating, though, is that where I went to, I knew consciously about that distinction that I just described, that if it was added in as an item to buy, it would have been many, many fewer sales that would have been made, and the impact and the usage would have not been there at all. So now the 250,000 copies, that's also a number that is not typical in the transactions of too many solopreneurs that I know. They're out there, but I'm not there yet. I like that word yet. The 250,000 sounds like a big number, which it is, until you put it in context. That year, the Lillian Vernon catalog was dropping 17 million catalogs.
Wow.
That 250,000 of my booklet was a test for them. It was absolutely a test, and it was not a big number for them at all when you put that against 17 million. So context is really crucial when you're talking about going fishing in a bigger pond. And the thing about this that was just so wonderful was and I didn't even think to ask for it, but they were very generous in sharing with me results that they got from this campaign of offering this particular product as a gift with purchase. They shared with me that they had a 13% sales increase in
Wow.
one of their big lists, one of their favorite responsive lists that they mailed to. 13%, they made many, many times the ROI on what they paid me of 12.5.
For sure.
So all in all, it ended up being something that I had never done before, that I listened carefully, that I knew somebody, but I did not have any idea how good the relationship was or not to see if it would be an engagement of some sort. And I had nothing to lose on that other than 12.5 that I ended up with. So when I have seen any possibilities of how I think that something can work mechanically and the process of it, I just dive right in. And that the issue of can it be successful? Well, the logic of it holds. And there's lots and lots of models out there, not only something that is tangible that can be sold one unit at a time. My company no longer, after the very first year of being in business, makes single copies available. We only do bulk sales and content licensing. And that difference is that licensing, as I mentioned, is renting the use of the content. Bulk sales is what gets shipped to somebody's loading dock. So it's physical usually. And that's one of the more fun stories to tell about this.
I mean, I appreciate it again very much. Very fascinating to listen to. And I wonder if that same deal happened today, if it would still be 12.5, or with the inflation rate, if it would be 125, like instead of 12.5.
I'm open to discovering that, Tom.
Yeah. But in any case, Paulette, thank you very much for being my guest one more time. I really, really appreciate it. Always, I'm gonna say it every time I talk to you, but it's always a pleasure and always fun when I get on a call with you. So I appreciate you very much. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
Pleasure is mine, Tom.
And for everybody else out there, keep selling.